There's a strange pull toward the people who make us feel small, the ones who never fully step in, yet never fully step out. Their distance becomes a kind of gravity, drawing you closer even as they drift away. You tell yourself you should walk, that anyone who wanted you would choose you without hesitation, yet something in you leans forward anyway. It feels like chasing a door that's always cracked open but never wide enough to enter. You hear their footsteps, soft and fading, and you quicken your pace as if getting just a little closer will change the ending. And when they offer a moment of warmth, a smile, a message, a tender gesture, it lifts you just high enough to believe you matter, only for the ground to vanish again. Your mind knows they are unavailable. Your body responds as if their distance is a puzzle you were born to solve. The longing doesn't weaken when they pull away. It intensifies, becomes sharper, almost intoxicating. And so the question rises quietly, like breath on cold glass. Why do we chase what hurts us? Why does their absence feel like fate when it's really just distance? Most people explain their attraction to the unavailable with a shrug and a cliché: we want what we can't have. It sounds intuitive, even flattering, as if the desire itself were proof of passion or some romantic instinct for challenge. But that explanation collapses under scrutiny. What feels like pursuit is often a conditioned response to inconsistency, not a genuine preference for the person. Förster and Skinner's early work on intermittent reinforcement showed that unpredictable rewards create the strongest, most persistent behaviors, a principle now well established in behavioral psychology. When someone replies warmly one day and disappears the next, the nervous system interprets the unpredictability as a signal to invest more effort, not because the person is special, but because the pattern keeps the mind suspended between hope and uncertainty. This cultural script, that attraction deepens with difficulty, also hides a quieter psychological mechanism rooted in attachment learning. Individuals accustomed to inconsistent emotional availability often mistake emotional tension for chemistry. Bowlby's and Ainsworth's foundational research on attachment demonstrated that early environments shape how people respond to relational ambiguity later in life. When a partner oscillates between closeness and withdrawal, it reactivates familiar insecurity rather than creating genuine desire. The mixed signals produce a physiological arousal state that can be misinterpreted as longing because the body is responding to uncertainty rather than intimacy. Everyday dating scenarios, the delayed reply, the sudden enthusiasm, the unexplained silence, become small but powerful cues that pull the mind into analysis and pursuit. What appears on the surface as deliberate choice is, in reality, a nervous system conditioned to resolve ambiguity. The illusion is not that the person is desirable. The illusion is believing the intensity comes from them, rather than from the instability surrounding them. We tend to think desire is deliberate, that we choose whom we want, that longing is a matter of taste. Yet beneath the polished surface of adult attraction lies an older, quieter programming that began long before we ever learned the language of romance. The chase often starts in the nervous system, not the heart. Attachment research, including Mary Ainsworth's strange situation studies published in Developmental Psychology, shows that people exposed to inconsistent caregiving often internalize a blueprint of love that is unstable by design. When affection arrived unpredictably, the child learned to stay hypervigilant, always scanning for the next moment of warmth. That vigilance becomes a script the body remembers long after the mind forgets. The brain's reward circuitry reinforces this pattern. Studies on reward prediction error and intermittent reinforcement, such as those described by Schultz, Dayan, and Montague in Science, show that inconsistency can create stronger dopamine activation than steady reward. In simple terms, unpredictability feels electrifying because the brain wants to resolve the gap between hope and outcome. So when an adult says, "I don't know why I keep wanting the one person who doesn't want me," the answer is often neurological, not romantic. Consider the child who received affection only when they excelled, who learned that closeness must be earned, or the one who was praised one day and ignored the next, absorbing the belief that love is something you chase, never something you rest in. These patterns linger, they mature, they put on adult clothing, and when someone texts back only sometimes, When warmth arrives in brief flashes and then disappears, the old circuitry lights up. Maybe this time I'll get it right. The longing then is less about the person and more about the emotional relief the mind fantasizes they can deliver, the relief that once felt impossible to obtain. What seems like passion is often a survival strategy in disguise, an attempt to rewrite the first chapters of our emotional lives with new characters who resemble the old ones just enough for the pattern to feel familiar. In the digital world, unavailability doesn't look like a closed door anymore. It looks like a phone lighting up for everyone except you. The modern chase begins quietly, a message left unseen, a reply that comes hours later without emotion, an online status that feels like a pulse you keep checking just to confirm you still exist in someone's awareness. Technology was supposed to make connection effortless, yet it has turned longing into a loop of micro-rejections that the brain interprets as unfinished business. Every platform is engineered to drip small doses of attention, never enough to satisfy, but always enough to keep you reaching. A single like from someone emotionally distant can feel like a promise, even when their silence communicates the opposite. You start noticing patterns that shouldn't matter. The minutes they were active, the posts they viewed but didn't acknowledge, the story they watched without responding. Ambiguity becomes a lure, because the nervous system reacts more strongly to uncertainty than to clarity. What you're chasing isn't the person, but the possibility that the next notification will finally soothe the tension they created. Digital culture rewards the emotionally unavailable. The less they respond, the more others project significance onto them. Detachment reads as confidence, inconsistency reads as depth, silence becomes a canvas where the imagination paints intimacy that doesn't actually exist. The algorithms amplify the illusion by placing their content in your feed at precisely the moments when engagement spikes, reinforcing the cycle with perfect timing. This is how unavailability modernizes itself. It doesn't appear as rejection. It appears as a breadcrumb trail of attention that keeps the mind suspended between hope and doubt. You scroll, you check, you interpret, you wait. Each small hint feels like progress, though nothing is changing. The relationship becomes less about two people and more about the fluctuating dopamine curve triggered by screens. In this landscape, longing isn't romantic. It's programmed. The pursuit persists not because the connection is meaningful, but because the system is designed to make the distant feel desirable and the uncertain feel urgent. Healing begins the moment we recognize that longing for the unavailable is not destiny, but a conditioned echo of earlier emotional landscapes. When desire is reframed as a signal rather than a verdict, space opens for choice. Research on self-compassion by Kristin Neff shows that emotional patterns soften when met with curiosity rather than self-criticism, published in Self-Compassion 2011. Likewise, Daniel Siegel's work on interpersonal neurobiology emphasizes that awareness of bodily states can interrupt automatic relational loops, published in The Developing Mind, 2012. The task is not to suppress longing, but to understand what it is trying to resolve. A practical starting point is noticing the somatic pull toward those who offer inconsistency. The quickening heartbeat, the restless anticipation, the small spikes of adrenaline. These sensations often masquerade as attraction, yet they frequently signal an old blueprint being activated. Pausing before acting on these impulses gives the nervous system time to differentiate between genuine compatibility and the familiar lure of emotional distance. This pause is the first moment of power. Healing also involves choosing partners who demonstrate reliability, even when that reliability feels unfamiliar or boring. Many people with anxious attachment histories experience stability as discomfort because it lacks the highs and lows that intermittent reinforcement once provided. Learning to sit with that discomfort without fleeing toward intensity gradually retrains the reward system to associate safety with connection, not danger. Small relational experiences of reciprocity accumulate, reshaping expectations of intimacy. Ultimately, the work is not about extinguishing desire, but guiding it toward relationships that can hold it. When longing is recognized as a remnant of earlier emotional survival strategies, it no longer dictates choices. Instead, It becomes a quiet reminder of the transformation already underway, moving from pursuit to presence, and from proving one's worth to receiving it. As the video draws to a close, it gently returns to the paradox first posed. Our desire for those who reject us is rarely about them at all. It is about the unfinished parts of ourselves, the echoes of past needs and insecurities still seeking acknowledgement. The narration softens, inviting the viewer to recognize that the heart's chase is often a reflection of unresolved emotional history rather than genuine connection. The yearning for the unattainable, once felt as urgent and irresistible, begins to reveal its true origin. A lesson in longing, not in love. A subtle shift occurs as the imagery turns calm. The figure, once reaching toward a half-open door, finally steps back, choosing instead the path that has quietly awaited them all along. The tone is one of quiet liberation, not dramatic triumph. In this moment, the video offers a gentle but profound insight. When we confront and heal the wounds that made us chase what could not stay, the pull of the unavailable diminishes. Desire is replaced by clarity, rest by self-respect, and the heart begins to recognize its own worth. Real love, the video concludes, is never about pursuit. It is the connection that meets us fully where we are, unasked, unearned, and wholly deserving.